Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sunday Brunch. I am your host, Artem, and of course, we have with us today Russ Whitfield. Russ, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you very much. It's the day after my birthday, so I had a pretty low-key birthday yesterday, it must be said. Well, I had a birthday weekend, actually. My mate Chris came over on Friday night, we had a few beers and shot the shit, and then last night I was really low-key. My daughter Sam took me out for dinner, and we had pizza, and then we came home and watched boxing, and that was pretty much it. And here I am, ready for positive fandom on the Sunday after my birthday.
Well, happy belated birthday to you,
Thank you.
Russ. Certainly, I'm so glad that you are here with us every Sunday, and I hope you had a wonderful birthday celebration. Certainly, the world is better since you are in it, Russ.
Oh,
So
it's too
glad.
kind. Likewise, and thank you so much. It's very sweet of you to say.
And thank you for the same. But certainly, yeah, it's Sunday brunch, Russ. Yes, Tom Jr. Jackson is here, our moderator, my
Thanks.
collaborator here. All good people. Tom Jr. Jackson says, good morning and welcome, everyone. And Tom is kind enough to shout out some reminders right from the get go. Tonight, right here on Positive Fandom, I'm going to be doing a live watch party at 9:30 p.m. Eastern for The Last of Us Episode 2 with Lorraine Creel. So please do check that out. And on Monday, you can check me out on the Burr Network for Ladies of the PGS at 6 p.m. Eastern
What
Standard
are you
Time.
doing on Monday?
I'm sorry?
What are you doing on Monday on Ladies of the
What are we
PGS?
discussing on Monday?
Hmm.
We're going to be discussing Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival of 2023. We're
Hmm.
also going to be talking about Jason Momoa, um, you know, on Monday.
You don't need a reason to talk about Jason Momoa. We'll just leave it there. We'll just draw a line.
And so do check it out, guys. And we might talk about some other things, but I have to see first what happens with everything. But yeah, it's going to be a great discussion on the Burr Network. Also on Friday, I'm going to be hosting right here on the channel part 2 of Napoleon and Josephine, a love story review with Darth Plato and wow, and Tom Jr. Jackson. Yes, about a week or so from now, maybe a little bit more, I'm going to be reviewing The Message with Cameron Pasha right here on Positive Fandom on Tuesday, the 31st of January. So thank you
Oh,
so much.
Tuesday the 31st of January is a big day for me too. Apparently, there's a Pamela Anderson documentary coming out on Netflix, and I'm there for it, man. I love Pamela. She's my favourite.
Really? Really? Are you
Mhm.
going to be reviewing it, Russ?
Well, it's going to be an emotional experience for me. Pammy hasn't been on screen for a while. It seems like 2023, Pammy's making a big comeback. She's got this new movie out called Alone at Night, which you told me we won't be able to see until after Sundance. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
If it's premiering at Sundance, yes, because unless you were a screener, and I didn't do that this year. I wasn't a screener this year, so I didn't have access to a lot of films that I had access last year. So you can't really see it. It's not available, but after I think the 29th, it might be available for streaming or in theaters. So the release dates are still up in the air. I don't know whether it's been purchased by anybody. Maybe it was purchased by Netflix or by Hulu or something
Mhm.
like that. So a lot of these films that are in Sundance right now aren't necessarily purchased yet.
Well, I don't know if it's at Sundance, but it's described as an erotic horror thriller with Pamela Anderson. What's not to love? What is not to love? Like
Oh, it is?
she's my favorite. She's always been my favorite. So I'm really excited to see it and see what Pammy's doing. And yeah, this documentary thing, I don't know. It's really funny. Like, I worked at BP for like 20 years, and yeah, I left there like I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, whatever it was. And I got a text from a guy called Lee that works at BP, and he goes, "Oh, Russ, I saw this and thought of you." Like everybody that knows me, they see Pamela Anderson, they think of me. I don't know why. So he said there's this documentary starting on Netflix. So
Well,
check it out.
it sounds amazing, Russ. I certainly do want to check that out. And there's a lot to talk about Sundance for sure. This year, it's back in person. And surprisingly, I tried to get the online access, which I get every year. and it
Hmm.
sold out faster than hotcakes. I wasn't expecting that, and I didn't go the press route, which is what I would normally do. I went individual. So next time, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to make sure that I get something under the Burr Network, of course.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
going to say, can you not sort out a press pass? Like, can Rob sort that out for you? Because like the network, I think is a registered. Is it an LLC?
yes, it is.
Well, there
Yes.
you go. So yeah, you should get it. Yeah, Rob, pull your finger out, sort it out, man. Otherwise, I'm
So
going to write. Otherwise, I'm going to send a letter to the network, make him find it out as to why RM hasn't got a press pass. So there you go.
well, I mean, I have
My letter's going to start. Well, Rob, you know.
well, certainly it's stuff that's coming down the pike. But yes, it is something to think about. And you and I, Russ, are going to talk a lot about Sundance and some of the films there and things that are coming up. Good morning, Retro Nerd Girl. Retro Nerd Girl says, good morning, all ready to go. Been up since 6 a.m. Got that coffee on. I see that. Retro Nerd Girl, such a pleasure to see you here today, guys. Do check out Retro Nerd Girl's channel. She's doing a bunch of lives. She did a bunch of lives last week and the week before. Guys, check out her channel. She's got a lot going on. You certainly do want to look at her channel and see her fantastic reviews. Looking forward to that for sure. Good to see you. Mario Lopez is here.
Hey, Mario.
Mario says, hi, everyone. As usual, doing some work while enjoying Sunday brunch live show. Well, Mario, it's always a pleasure to see you. I hope you're well. And I hope your family's well, Mario. Just great to see you here this morning. Always a pleasure. And Tom, of course, Tom is here this morning as well, along with Thalia Meyer. Good morning. Thalia says, good morning, Russ, Tom Jr., and everyone in this chat. Well, good morning to you. So glad to see you here this morning. Hope you were doing well. Tom Jr. Jackson says, happy birthday, Russ.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yes, a lot of birthday wishes to you, Russ. Certainly,
Thank you, mate.
happy belated birthday. Best wishes.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Oh,
And
Big Joe. Hey, man.
Hey, Joe, how are you? Joe says, good day, and Russ, well, good day to you. Ooh, and Justin is here saying, sexy AF. Well, thank you, Justin. I decided I wanted to wear this see-through dress, and you can't see the whole thing, but I assure you it is quite sheer. So thank you, Justin, for that, for noticing. I certainly am doing it for you guys, but a little bit for me as well. And guys, check out Retro Nerd Girls channel. The link is right here in the chat. Thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson, for doing that. We so appreciate it. So, Russ, there has been so many developments this past week or so. We had, for the first time in a while, the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards that has been getting a lot of buzz, a lot of normal buzz that we're expecting to see. Stuff that we haven't been seeing for a while, a lot of excitement. Things are really kind of turning around, and it feels really good to see this level of excitement in Hollywood and beyond, Russ. And yes, you're right, Russ. Everybody has been talking about what they're calling a corporate thriller, sexual thriller that reminds everybody of Fatal Attraction, Russ. I haven't heard those beautiful words since the 80s or 90s, Fatal Attraction. I'm sorry, am I saying the right one? Not Fatal Attraction.
Basic Instinct.
Basic Instinct, yes. Basic Instinct. I don't know why I'm thinking of Fatal Attraction, but it does still have the same actor.
And Michael Douglas, didn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And I can't get him off of my mind. Hello, Joey Johnson. Good morning to you.
And thanks, Big Joe, for the birthday wishes. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Yes. Everybody's talking about this film called Fair Game, Russ, that is absolutely kind of lighting up the screen at the Sundance Film Festival, where people are just absolutely enticed by it, and a lot of controversial scenes in it. Certainly, everybody is just absolutely fascinated by this film. Russ, is it time for the next sexy corporate thriller? in the movies. And, what do you think about this?
Well, we talked about it on this channel. We often said we should get together and write an erotic thriller like they used to have in the 90s. Because they were a huge thing back in the day. So I don't know much about this. You've not seen it, right?
No, no one, like I said, no one has seen it unless you were a screener or unless you were one of the persons who was at Sundance for a special screening. I believe it doesn't even, it's not even available to the public really until the 24th or 5th. In general, you can buy a ticket, but there was some kind of a preview. It debuted on Friday. If you got tickets to go see it on Friday, you could see it, but not everybody can go to every screening at the film festival. And for a lucky few, they got a chance to see this thriller, which they're saying is just unbelievable, Russ. And certainly we needed to see something exciting like this, something certainly push us in a direction that would be very enticing, very mature. And apparently, there's a lot of very natural moments in it, or at least what I like to call discovery moments for us. I call them discovery moments because it's the moment where you realize that we're all human beings and we all, like sex is a messy kind of thing. And, you enjoy the messiness of it or you don't do it at all. It's kind of like understanding that when you're with somebody, you're going to discover all these things about them. And I have a feeling that we do see that in this film, somewhat more raunchy version of maybe even shocking sexual activity during different times in a woman's biology, Russ. Different times in a woman's biology. I'm not going to say
Is
more.
that what you're saying? Okay, right. I'm with you. That was a long way route. I think we got there in the end. I don't know. Yeah, I have a lot of hope for 2023, man. And I don't. Is this because I don't know anything about this one? Is this an erotic thriller? Is that what we're talking? Is this like out of the 90s and he's an advertising executive and his missus is doing this, that, and the other, and it's all that kind of thing? Are we talking erotic thriller or are we talking thriller that has lots of sex in it? Because
Well,
they're two different things. Because like with the erotic thriller, the sort of liaisons were kind of the point. It's a bit like a karate movie, isn't it? In the erotic thrillers of the 90s, you'd have a certain, you'd have plot, sexy scene, plot, sexy scene, plot, and then the sexy scene would stop before at the end of the second act, and then you'd get the resolution where the thriller would do its thing.
Well, apparently in the story, it says the movie follows two ambitious analysts at a cutthroat hedge fund, which is, the norm nowadays, who are in a passionate secret relationship, it says. Several steamy scenes had some declaring the return of the erotic thriller, Russ. And it says that film historian Karina Longworth, whose podcast is called You Must Remember This, recently delved into the erotic thriller moment of the 1980s and tweeted, it was Fatal Attraction, tweeted that it does for the 2020s what Fatal Attraction did for the late 80s. So it's Fatal Attraction. I don't know why I thought I was right. It was Fatal Attraction. And she's the woman who wrote and directed the film says, I did set out to make a thriller about gender power dynamics within a relationship that happens to be highly sexual. I think the execution of that intention ended up flipping the erotic thriller genre on its head. This is only her second film. And certainly there's been a lot of buzz. I'm sure people have been, fighting over to buy the film from her. She goes on to say how she navigates work life in a very male dominated industry and how she navigates her relationship. And, in many ways has to make herself smaller in order to make other people feel comfortable. I could relate to that. Certainly, it's very interesting when we're thinking about this. Robert had the scoop on some of the things that we saw or would be seen in the film. So I have not seen this film, Russ. I don't know much about the film other than literally what's in this article and what everybody is talking about. And from what Robert has said, there are some moments, some very special, intimate moments where a lot is revealed more than what we would normally see on screen. But what I thought was interesting is what we were talking about last night is the idea that being with somebody sexually is an incredibly intimate moment, where it absolutely deals with a lot of biology. And if you're not comfortable with a lot of this biology, you're gonna have a difficult time getting intimate with somebody. There's a lot involved. It can get messy. There's all sorts of things that happen during sex. And I think it's interesting for them to go in this area because um, it's something that I don't want to talk about. In fact, I don't even like the fact that men know we have this, but it's not a secret, but still, I think it's a very interesting foray down that road and certainly not something you would do with just anyone. So perhaps it's a symbol of how tight and how close they are in this story. And anybody who's ever lived with the opposite sex already knows all about it. Is it necessary to put it in this film? Russ, what do you think about, maybe the overextension or the oversharing of a lot of intimate details that people don't even normally talk about?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of listening to you reading about that, and that all sounds like a bunch of horse shit to me. I mean, why can't people just come out and say, yeah, we wanted to make a sexy film, but no, we're dressing it all up in gender politics and all that. And it kind of feels like the director has to say this, whereas back in the 90s, they were just like, they were just balls out about what they were doing. They were sort of dressing up soft porn as a thriller. I don't know. I don't know. I can't really comment on how intimate this film gets until I've actually seen it. But we'll certainly watch it, we'll certainly review it. What I'm kind of hopeful for is this kind of been an expensive film to make. I said I'm kind of hopeful for 2023, and it just seems the way that the year has kicked off. Maybe people have realised that there is room for this sort of low to mid budget stuff, and people will go and watch it, and everything doesn't have to be a tentpole. And tentpoles, by their very nature, ought to be special. And we've been in an era for the longest time where every single movie that comes out is a huge blockbuster. Certainly that is of our interest. Hey, Darth Plato. So I'm keen to see it. I'm certainly keen to see Alone at Night. I really want to watch that one. And there's a bunch of other stuff, coming out. I just saw Scott Adkins and Michael Joe White together in London doing something, which is obviously, they're working on a new project together. So that's exciting. And, those films are never high budget. And it obviously means that Hitman's Holiday was a success for Adkins because he's now got another contract to make another film. So maybe we'll start to see more of this stuff. And I think with erotic thrillers, especially, not of the cinematic nature, but of the direct to streaming or direct to video market, they can be more risque and they don't have to tick as many boxes, if you like, and they can be made cheap. That's the thing. You just have to find a couple of willing people that aren't embarrassed to show a bit of skin, get a bit of decent story together, and you're in for a way. So I hope this genre does return. I used to love them. I told you, I think it was last week, my favorite ones were Animal Instincts 1 and 2. I remember it, and that was the 90s.
Absolutely, Russ. You make a lot of good points here about having to spend so much money on entertainment. And, are you even going to reap back the investment you're putting into these films and then something like this getting so much attention? Mario Lopez talks about the problem of Shades of Grey was that those movies had no interesting plot or story. And that is also something of a big concern about a lot of these highly charged sexual films, whether or not there is a plot or story. And I don't know, of course, as I said, guys, I haven't seen this film. It premiered on Friday at Sundance to a very lucky audience of people. And there has been a lot of chatter about it, as I said, for a number of different reasons.
Women going to the cinema to watch 50 Shades of Grey could give a shit about the plot. And this is when we first started talking about this, right?
Yes.
Those films were ridiculous, and those books were ridiculous. And it was always the sort of the meme, wasn't there? Like there's a picture of what's the guy's first name? Gray. His first name, I can't remember. Anyway, but there's like a picture of him, and of course he's like, he's like dashing and so good looking, but painfully good looking. And it's kind of like, when it's him, it's sexy, but if this guy, it's a felony. All that stuff. It's like your typical internet guy. But that's when we first started talking about it, and we were saying, like the plots of those books, I think they were Twilight fan fiction that they just changed, right? That seems to be the rumor. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Is that better? Can you hear me better now?
That's much better.
Yeah. I wish you'd have said my microphone was up at the top.
Um, yeah. So I think, ladies, the erotic fiction market, kind of in the 90s, was pitched at men. Okay, and I think maybe in the 21st century, this thing's going to be more pitched at women, and great. And I hope there's more of it, because they were sexy. They really were.
Yeah, they were. Retro Nerd Girl says Paul Verhoeven was so good at making the sexy thriller. I hope we get back to that a little. Gone Girl was pretty good at it. Yes, I agree with Paul Verhoeven comment 100%. We do need to get back to that. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he made the film that I'm always talking about from 2021 that won the Palme d'Or. I think it's called Titane. I think he was the director there. Let me
Hmm.
just make sure. No, no, it's Julia de Corneau. Sorry, but he made Benedetta. That's the film I'm thinking of. That same year, he made Benedetta, and I thought that that film was equally as good as Titane, although just a different point of view. Certainly, an erotic film made about nuns is a topic that's going to be somewhat scandalous, but it didn't matter because I felt that it was important film because nuns are also human beings. They're not sort of these creatures that just exist somewhere with habits on. They are human beings with human emotions as well. And so, I think to deal with that, to deal with what happens as a human being, especially young nuns in this particular case, was really important to do that. And of course, there's more to the story in Benedetta, but he certainly was able to capture that sexy thriller. Although this wasn't a thriller, Benedetta was not a thriller, but it certainly was a controversial and somewhat jarring film. Um, Darth Plato talks about Tanya Roberts. Now you're going way back, Darth Plato. You're talking like the 90s, right, Russ?
Tonya Roberts. I don't know. I was thinking of Tanya, someone. She was really sexy as well. No, I don't know Tonya Roberts.
Yeah, she was like in late 80s, early 90s. I'm gonna say erotic actor who was really good. She was great. I've
Mhm.
seen a lot of films of hers, Darth Plato, so we can talk about that. Certainly, Stubble McShave is here with us.
Oh my God, yeah. Can you imagine that? I watched Basic Instinct on home video at my friend's house when I was in my teens. Halfway through, his parents joined us to watch the movie, and it was one of the most uncomfortable moments in my life. I know, like, we kind of Scandinavians got a reputation for being, sort of a little bit more liberated than we are in Great Britain when it comes to this sort of thing. But no, I can imagine that was a bit cringe. Funny enough, me and Sam are watching the Tudors at the moment, and that's also a bit cringe because we didn't realize going into it that the whole point of the Tudors is just to get everybody from sex scene to sex scene. Like, we had no idea. We only watched it because it was the people from Vikings, and we think Vikings is so meme worthy. Oh, we'll watch this. And yeah, so there's a lot of looking away and fast forwarding going on through that.
But isn't Cavill in that?
He is in that, and yeah, and he's a bit of a cad actually in it. Um, so yeah, but it's just so bad. Like, it's got an amazing cast, amazing actors in it, and the show is just awful. But it's deliciously awful. It's like Vikings. It's crap, and we just love watching it because it's so funny. It's such good fun to watch.
Well, Stubble, I think we've all had situations like this in our lives. For me, it was when my cousin's boyfriend bought her Purple Rain for her birthday, and they insisted that the whole family watch it together. So, of course, I'm talking about the nude scene and a bunch of other stuff that went on in the film. That certainly wasn't stuff that you would necessarily see with your parents, but still a great film. I don't regret a minute of it, Stubble. Um, and Luminara 843 is here with us this morning. Hello, Luminara. Luminara also is a YouTuber, guys. Please do check out Luminara's streams. I know that she is a figure flexor for 1/6 scale figures and so much more. So please do check her out. Luminara 843. It is such a pleasure to see you here this morning. And thank you so much. Darth Plato says that Tanya Roberts was the Bond girl from A View to a Kill. She was, and she has made some other somewhat more revealing films, Darth Plato, as well. So if you're up on Bond girl trivia and information, she was one of them. A really beautiful woman. Um, So thank you so much for that, Darth Plato. And of course, uh, we also have Gary Bando Sandwich Worthington,
Hmm.
who,
See, Mario here mentions Flesh and Blood. That had some shocking scenes. That was a disgusting movie, Flesh and Blood. In terms of it was set during I think the 1400s or the 1500s. Um, I think it was Verhoeven's first English language movie, and it's there's plague and it's gross. I mean that movie is gross, but it fits the movie. Like it's supposed to be gross. These are sort of medieval peasants and mercenaries and things like that. But it did have Jennifer Jason Lee doing some revealing stuff in that, and of course, to your teenage eyes, like Jennifer Jason Lee, whatever it is, she's got it. And I remember that when, and then of course there was the sort of the nude scenes and the sex scenes and all that sort of things. So that was made young Russ a happy Russ. I shared that moment with you, Mario.
well, that is great to hear. I love when people talk about how much they enjoyed a film. Certainly, it did have some shocking scenes, and I have a feeling, Mario, that this corporate thriller Fair Play also has some shocking scenes, with it being described as if it looked like somebody, like there was, it was a murder scene. That's how intense this one was, from what I gather. And as I said, the idea of sharing those discovery moments, things that usually only when you're in a relationship, really committed to the relationship, you are going to see. This is perhaps one of those situations, but it does happen. I was going to say that, although I don't think it's anything that I'm going to discuss any further, but it does happen. And there is that. Retro Nerd Girl says the thing that may get pushback is the notion of the crazy, over sexualized femme fatale or the damaged male serial killer tropes. But
Well,
truthfully, those
uh,
films were entertaining.
well, this is it, Retro, right? And this is what I'm beginning to think at the beginning of 2023. um, I'm beginning to think that this sort of offense culture and hand wringing culture, and everything's exploited and everybody's offended by everything, virtue signaling bullshit, is starting to go out of the window. So I think for the erotic thriller, you're gonna have the hand wringing and, oh, it's exploitative of women, and it's this and it's that and it's the other. But as you say, those films were great fun, and I don't believe that they were exploitative of women. I mean, they were, especially, they were not, porn, were they? They were movies that were made, and the actresses were getting paid, and they were getting paid well to do it. And some of them became really, really famous. There was one, and she was in blonde girl, and she was in absolutely everything. She was in hundreds of these things. And I'm kind of hoping that this is a trope now of like, oh, I'm so offended by this, and oh, that poor girl, and oh, I hope that sort of goes out the window. And you know, it's kind of like karate movies, right? Or a tournament movie. I love watching karate movies, and I especially love a tournament movie. And I've seen that what happens in a tournament movie. The guy goes there, he has loads of fights, and then he has a crisis of confidence and nearly loses, but then he comes back in the end and wins. And I've seen that movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I've seen that movie with Bruce Lee. I've seen that movie with Chuck Norris. I've seen that movie with Alan Moosey. I've seen that movie with pretty much anybody. I've seen that movie with Amy Johnston, which was the best one. And I watch him over and over again, and they're tropey and all the rest of it. And I hope that we see a resurgence of the skin flick. Hey, maybe Rob can direct one, because he's an old hand at that. What was that, Femme Fatales he used to do?
Yeah, it was femme fatales,
All
and
right,
that.
there we go. That's our 2023 challenge. We'll write it, and Rob will find the money, and he'll direct our erotic thriller. How
I
about
am
that?
down for that, Russ.
All
We will
right.
write something that will blow everyone away, because you can imagine what's going through my mind. And I can only imagine what's going through yours once we get pen to paper or in the computer, Russ. This is going to be absolutely stellar. And I think since Robert knows how well, it had the best lesbian scene ever in it. And, I think that just goes to show you that there's a lot more in store, a lot more to explore when it comes to these sex scenes. We haven't even scratched the surface. Porn doesn't really do it, because what porn does is that porn is overproduced. It's an overproduced version of a sexual act that really has lost a lot of its luster, Russ. And ironically, a lot of people are getting into trouble for putting up stuff that should not even be on some of these sites. Honestly, I just wish they would just shut it down, because I think it's somewhat played out. That's what I'm gonna say. I think
I
it's
think
kind
the fun has been taken out of it. I mean, I certainly, when you were a sort of teenager or whatever, and it was kind of like, sort of finding out where your dad had hid that one video, and like, you'd have to go and try and find it, and make sure that there was nobody around and all that kind of thing. And of course, now you just go on to, Tube Galore or whatever, and it's all there for you. There's no thrill. There's no seeking it out. It's just like it's there. Whatever you can think of, you can find it online, and it's all free. But I think if the psychology of it, and I'm no psychologist, however, I think the thing about the erotic thriller, as opposed to the the pornography stuff, is going to be more appealing to men. By and large, there are going to be exceptions, but guys are going to go for that sort of thing. Whereas the erotic thriller is sexier, and there's a bit more build up to it, and it's not as hardcore. So I imagine that will appeal to ladies more, and I think there's a market for it. And I wonder if there's a market for to cast talent that is perhaps not in their 20s or 30s, but perhaps cast people in their 40s and 50s. Erotic thriller with Denise Richards, I'd watch that. Erotic thriller with Pam Anderson, I'd watch that. Erotic thriller with Kate Beckinsale, I'd watch that.
of
uh,
thriller with Halle Berry, I'd watch it.
there you go. So we're just reeling them off, and all these actresses are of our era. So
There's a lot of
yeah.
things I'd like to see some actors do to Halle Berry or vice versa. I think that she's very talented. I think she could really kind of pull in the sexy there.
Well, she did in that Monsters Ball with Billy Bob. That was hot. That scene was hot, and it was renowned for being hot. And then there was the one before that. She was in a film with Hugh Jackman, and it was about hackers. And I can't remember anything about the film, but I remember I was watching it with my ex-wife, and there's a scene when she's reading a book, and she just puts the book down, and she's like topless in the scene, and it was like wow, and I was like wow, and then Sally Sally paused it, and she said wow. Just look at those, and I was like, yeah, I'm happy to have it on pause.
Does for
But
that.
yeah, she's a stunner.
The guy from Pulp Fiction was in that. Who was in that with him? Her.
Travolta,
Um, yeah,
swordfish,
yeah,
swordfish.
yes. And just, I always say that sometimes the best sex, nude scenes are ones where the person isn't even trying to be sexy, but is. And that's an example. She's just sitting there in the chair.
She's just stunning. She's just stunning, and she's like many of these people, she's physically perfect. She's beautiful. She's stunning. She's got amazing body, amazing attributes. And yeah, it was a pausable moment for
Human being.
for my ex.
But it goes to show you that sometimes a nude scene, even in the simplest way, can be the sexiest thing. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be where someone is necessarily taking their shirt off and shaking all over the place. Like, it doesn't have to be that. Someone was telling me that last night that they were watching Life Force. And I said, one of the interesting things about that film or the autopsy of Jane Doe is that you can use nudity there, but it's not being pushed in your face.
No,
It's more of a casual reveal and kind of discovery moment that certainly is something very special, and it becomes more special because we're not necessarily trying to produce it and make it into this package that porn does, that
yeah. I mean, I think
ultimately
Matilda May spoke a lot about that, didn't she, on Life Force? And she said at the beginning of it, she said it was awful. I was like, I was really, really young, and there are all these, guys there, and I was just walking around in the. She said, but by day 3, I'd just gotten so used to it, and everyone had gotten so used to it, it just wasn't a thing. And she she was ethereal, wasn't she, Matilda May? My God, and yeah, it was lovely.
And honestly, the same thing can be said about some nude scenes for men as well, in my opinion. Although it's not as focused on or talked about,
Hmm.
there are a lot of times when I see nude scenes for men, and it's not meant to be overly sexual or anything like that. It's just, I'm going to see that and notice that and say, wow, he's incredible, or whatever it is. So there is something to be said for moments like that are perfectly timed. It wasn't meant to shock you. It was meant to kind of make you realize that this is, being attracted to somebody is a pleasurable experience. I think
Hmm.
that's what this is saying. I don't think it's meant to say, oh my God, look at what we just saw. No, it's supposed to be like, wow, that's incredible. I really enjoyed that. That's what entertainment is supposed to do, make you enjoy those moments, regardless, of what you're seeing. That's why we're here, Russ. That's why we're talking about entertainment here on this show and with all of you guys in the chat. So it's so important to capitalize on a lot of that oftentimes. And I also think that going forward with all this talk about nudity and kind of seeing glances of people, I think that there has to be some creativity involved in it. And it is true, excuse me, that in House of the Dragon last year, we didn't get as many sex scenes. Thank you, Retro Nerd Girl. It does. It's completely natural. And I think that in House of the Dragon, especially for some of the characters or some of the younger actors in it who maybe didn't want to reveal a lot, we still saw a lot of sexual kind of natural behavior. And, Russ, that scene that I really enjoyed in House of the Dragon where where the main character, she kind of tempts her century
Yeah, Rhaenyra. She gets the bodyguard whose name is forgotten his name now. But yeah, there was that bit. But didn't they say didn't weren't they were called out on that? It's like, what's this is Game of Thrones. Where's all the nudity? Where's all the sex? They were like,
yeah,
well, we kind of
yes,
wanted to pull back on that a little bit and make it more about the plot. And it's like, well, that's kind of like, having fish and chips without, you can have the salt but not the vinegar. It's like, no, come on, man. It's Game of Thrones. This is what it's all about. But yeah,
I,
maybe attitudes are starting to shift. Maybe things are starting to change. Maybe in the lower budget arena, and maybe there's a market for it. I mean, I'm sure there is a market for it, and I'm sure that market is female. And I think, maybe if I've got some time, I might try and take that genre on. So it's funny. I was rewriting a bunch of stuff this weekend, and I got the karate things, and then I realized I've done an action one, and I've done a western. I haven't done a horror, and I haven't done an erotic thriller. So I don't know, because they're kind of like they're sort of like twins, aren't they? Erotic thriller, horror, erotic thriller. I don't know. Maybe I could do both.
well, good morning, Keely Chow, to you.
Oh, roll
Roll
tide, Keely. Yay, Keely's here.
Keely
And
says,
so's
hey.
Jamin. Hey, Jamin D.
Yes, Jamin D is here, everybody. So good to see you, Jamin D, who reminded us that it was Swordfish, and music by Paul Oakenfeld. That's right, Jamin D. Thank you for mentioning that as well. So glad that you did bring that up. But Russ, I think that House of the Dragon needed to have more nudity in it. But I also think that it could be placed differently. For example, it seems pretty clear that there are some actors who are comfortable with nudity and others that are not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how these contracts are written and what they're comfortable with, but I think that, recently we had a situation where it could be age-based, it could not be, but it seems like a lot of the younger actors, male and female, are not comfortable with any of that. So if this is the case, then let's have the older actors who are comfortable with it, or people who are very, very comfortable with nudity do it. Russ, you mentioned older actors. Catherine Deneuve has been doing sex scenes like her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, I don't remember a film where I've seen her in where she hasn't had sex either with a man or a woman in it. And I think it's the perfect situation because it's the reality of being a sexual being. So I think that that's kind of important. And I also think it's really interesting, the idea of not letting, like if you don't use it, you lose it, so to speak. For those of us who do want to see these sex scenes, I don't think that they should really ever stop. I think that it's something that is very interesting and, does help, the story to grow and progress in a different way that other things don't. Once there's a sexual act, some kind of sexual act in a film or nudity or something pertaining to that, the story does move on a bit. And I think there's expectation in it. I think people want to see these things, but we're not seeing them. So when you have a film like this at Sundance that pops up, people are all over this, Russ, because this is what they want. They can take it and remove and add stuff to it if they want to, Russ. The final edit may not look like what they saw at Sundance, but it certainly is something to arouse curiosity and make people excited for entertainment again. We need to have more sex in these stories. It's just pretty clear. And I don't care the age of the person, honestly, Russ. It doesn't make a difference to me as long as they are above the age of consent and it's legal and they know what they were getting into. I'm fine with as much nudity as possible. And even kind of, just you and I were talking about seeing some sex scenes, and I did kind of briefly mention it, but not overproduced sex scene. The person takes their clothes off and gets into a tub. It's not overproduced. It's not kind of like, where they have to show themselves in a certain angle or anything like that. Nothing like that. Just be natural with it. It's still incredibly hot. We don't have to be coerced into liking something from a certain point of view. It's just, we don't need that. We can still enjoy it.
You just reminded me of one of the sexiest things I've ever seen in a film ever. And I can't remember the name of the film, but I remember the scene. It's the only thing I can remember about the scene. And it had the Scottish actor in it. He was in Wanted. He was Professor X. What's his name? Young Scottish guy. And he was young Professor.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. His name is Mick.
James McAvoy.
Yes.
It was James McAvoy and Rosario Dawson. And there's a scene in the film where Rosario just walks towards the camera, having, and she's completely naked, and it was mind blowing. It was so sexy, and there was no real sex to speak of in the film. It was just that one scene. It was incredible. So you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more. It's just interesting, picking up on what Retro was saying earlier on and what they're saying in this article here. Sorry, because it's bigger on that screen over there. No, it wasn't Wanted, Mike. It was another one. But there's this sort of conservative, and they're trying to sort of justify it about gender politics and this and that and this and that. And I'm just saying, no, let's just have some sexy movies. Why not? Why not? Why can't we do that? Why do we have to justify it? Why do we have to pretend it's about reversing the roles and doing all this sorts of things? Let's just make some fun movies. And I really hope 2023 is going to be that year where things start to turn around and we get some just, yes, it was Mario Trance. That was it. Nice one. Yeah, that was the film.
And hello, Mike has bad knees. Nice to see you here today.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, Russ, you make a good point. You make a good point there. And Retro Nerd Girl says intimate scenes can also bring another level of depth for the characters, and hope it influences their decision. How it influences.
How it. Is that a Freudian slip, Retro?
And how it influences their decisions. Absolutely. I think that sex and sexuality and intimacy push a film forward in a different way than a lot of other, let's say, themes and parts of the story. And I like how it does that. And one of the things that I had talked about was in Avatar Part 2. In Avatar Part 2, when there's a scene, or let's say, it's not a major spoiler, but there's a part where Jake Sully's family has to relocate. They move. You know what it's like to move as a kid. Your parents say you're moving. You got to go someplace new. And that's exactly what happens with the kids. They have to move. But when they get to their destination, they are at a new location and there are new kids there. And, they're teenagers and they're attracted to one another. And it's pretty obvious that that's what's going on. I thought that we needed to see things like that. Kids are going to want to date each other and do things like this. It was completely natural, Russ. It didn't feel uncomfortable or weird. It was the normal course of events that we saw between them. And honestly, it had sort of a sense of sticking together and support. Even when you like somebody, how do you show you like someone? Guess what? It's usually when you got their back. When you tell them, I don't think it's right that you're doing this to them, when you're sticking up for somebody. And we saw things that even progressed the story a little bit, which I thought was pretty interesting. Them looking at each other, all these kind of intimate acts, if you will, that aren't necessarily they're not going to do anything physically, but they are attracted to each other. And we need to see that in a normal sense, because that's what happens in life. So I think it's kind of important too, when the way that they treated that, because they didn't want to have teenagers that were like, oh, hi, how are you? I don't even notice you that you're alive. That's
Mm.
just not realistic, Russ. You know, I thought that they treated that in a way that's comfortable for a family to see and appropriate for children of that age, for, you know, teenagers and kids of that age. That was also important to see too.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I think anything like this, we were talking about like the conservatism and all that sort of thing, and could this be seen as the objectification of women, and we're just having nudity for nudity's sake and all that stuff? And I think if you're offended by erotic thrillers, here's the thing: don't watch it, and allow the people that want to watch it enjoy it. Yeah, as a woman yourself, and retro said the same thing. Yeah, I love a bit of skin on that sort of thing. Yeah, it's sexy. Yeah, it's hot. The guy's hot. The girl's hot. It's not the hardcore stuff. It's just really really sexy. Really, and these people are all beautiful, and the story's sexy. And will they? Won't they? And da, 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 da. Let you guys enjoy that, and don't make a thing about it. That would be my everybody's in such a rush to be offended these days, and yeah. So fingers crossed. Maybe make it the year of the mid-tier budget action movie, horror movie, and erotic thriller. 2023, the year we came back.
Yeah, it is. And Stubble talks about Mimi Rogers and Brian Brown. I love Brian Brown. And I love Mimi Rogers. Did an erotic movie featuring a middle-aged couple. Don't remember the name of it, but Stubble, you do remember it, don't you?
Stubble. It's somebody helped him out. It was Tom. Tom helps him out. The full body massage is what it was called. But yeah, that's where I think the market is. RM. I'm not going to lie. I'm not so sure that bright young things will be interested in it. But I think the sort of 40 plus, people who remember those movies from back in the day. I think that's also there's a bit of nostalgia in it. So someone else here is talking about it's Turjay talking about Wild Things, right? So that was Denise Richards in her 20s, and now Denise Richards is the same age as all of us, in her 50s, and she still looks like $20 million. And like, would you watch Wild Things 2 or 3? Well, I know there was Wild Things 2, 3, 4, 5, and
Yes.
18, but wouldn't you watch a sequel with that of what happened to Denise's character if indeed she survives? But I can't remember the film, but I remember some of it. Would you be interested in catching up with her character, 30 years on? What's she doing now? Is she still the same person? It'd be interesting. Yeah, I'd watch it.
Absolutely. And of course, who doesn't love to see Nev Campbell and Denise Richards kissing in that film? The film was incredibly cool. I thought that was one of their best performances, and it would have been nice to have seen what would happen in the next one. Nev Campbell, maybe her best performance, I think. I don't think
I
anybody.
can't remember it. I remember Kevin Bacon was in it, wasn't he? Was it Kevin Bacon?
It was Kevin Bacon, Matt Dillon,
Matt
Teresa,
Dillon.
Daphne Rubin Vega, Robert Wagner, and Bill Murray in the film, along with Denise Richards and Nev Campbell. And of course, I'm
Mhm.
talking about the scene where the two of the girls are kissing each other. But it was a hot film. Like, it was really great. I love that film. Fun to watch, and why not just kind of enjoy it? Um, and Terrier, you are enjoying it because you have it in 4K. Certainly, he talks about it being just lovely seeing this erotic thriller. And it's nice to see that kind of exploration. Certainly, maybe a film ahead of its time. What do you think, Russ?
Um, I wouldn't say it's a film ahead of its time, because those films were very, very, very much in vogue in those days. Not only, you had the high budget ones, right? That were on and this would have been a high budget movie, with that cast and all the rest of it. So they were very much more accepted in those days. But yeah, I'm hoping they come back. And what's John Ware saying here? Also, the choreography of the intimate scene can reflect the relationship dynamics between. Yeah, well, you're quite right, and I can speak to this a little bit, because writing karate movies is the same kind of thing. Like, the fights, even though that they occur with boring regularity, if you mean, because I don't write very well, but however, they need to be part of the story. So if you sit back and even if you watch like a Scott Adkins movie and all that kind of thing, which are pretty uh how would I say? They're not the most original movies in the world. You know, manhunt, guy on revenge, soldiers being attacked, blah blah blah. You know, they're all these kind of stories. But if you
Yeah.
watch the fights will advance the story, and that's kind of the point. So what John Ware Jr. Is saying here is absolutely spot on. So although with a sort of 90s skin flick like Animal Instinct or Mirror in Images and or something like that, and somebody remembered the name of the actress I was trying to think of. We'll come to that in a minute. It's Jamin. Um, Still, those scenes have to forward the plot, and that's kind of the point. So, you know, I don't want to get too rightly about it, but they should have some relationship to what's going on in the story, and not just have Shannon Worry or whoever running around with a top off just because she's lovely.
Yeah, you're right about that. It does need to feel as if there was some thought to it, and some sense of creation versus, is this just another like, skin flick or peep
Mm.
show, which no one really wants to see that. I don't believe anybody goes in wanting to just think that things are just that way. And it's not satisfying. I think that that trope might be played out a bit. But John Ware talks about the choreography of an intimate scene can reflect the relationship dynamics between the characters at the time, positioning a movement exactly, yeah, almost to a flaw. Absolutely. And Shannon Tweed, who is married
Shannon
to,
Tweed was the
she's
one I was
married
trying to think of.
to the guy from Kiss, Gene
Yeah,
Simmons.
Gene Simmons. Yeah.
She's made a lot of great skin flicks. Thank you, Shannon Tweed. I've enjoyed those.
Mm.
She was great in those. Certainly enjoyable. I miss Skinamax. Terry goes on to say that yes, Denise Richards' character dies, but Nev survived. And Kevin showed his bacon, sausages, and eggs in the shower.
Well,
Absolutely.
I tell you what, Toja. Here's the thing about the erotic thriller, right? Now, this was a trope of erotic thrillers at the time. I just mentioned mirror images, right? So what happens in and Russ's updated erotic thriller is the twin sister of Denise Richards' character has been waiting 30, yeah, right. I've been waiting
Right.
30 years for her revenge, and
You
finally
killed
she's
my
gonna.
sister, but before I inflict revenge on you, we're going to have sex.
Well, quite so, because what she's going to have to do is sort of like entrap her and lure her in and make her fall in love with her, and only then when she can totally destroy her. There you go.
That's right.
That's it.
There it
Plot
is.
done. Thank you, Turjay.
Yes,
Done.
and I know exactly the love scenes that we're going to put in it, Russ.
Okie dokie. Will you text me?
I will. I certainly will, because they're playing out in my mind right now. Thank you, Terrier, for inspiring us with some classic movies here, that had some incredible love scenes. Wex Luthor says, but I'm a prude. It's okay to be a prude
It's
here.
okay to be. But it might not be the right stream for you. We seem to have gone into the weeds here a little bit. We started off by making observations about Sundance, and now here we are.
Yes, and Terrier says, "I'd buy that for $1, Terrier. Then
Genius.
keep $1 in your wallet for when this
Let's
comes."
write that thing. Let's write that thing.
Absolutely. Stubble McShave says, "In books, sex scenes and fight scenes have the same kind of beats. Blow by blow fighting is boring in a book. The same goes for sex scenes." I don't know about sex scenes being boring in a book, Stubble, but yes, I understand the relationship that you're referring to. Certainly, that's why, in so many films that we've seen that are action films, especially in the 80s, had like some kind of rendezvous in them out of nowhere. It's like, oh, someone's going to have sex now. Okay. I think that they felt that needed to be in there, not just to please crowds, but I don't know. Why were they put in there like that, Russ? Can you think of why they felt it was important to include some sex scenes in films that were clearly focused mainly on action, but we
There's
get an
a couple of things there. First of all, Stubble, it's so weird, man. When I was writing my books, I did all the combat sort of blow by blow, like I just described all of those fights. I think if Darth Player was on, he'll tell you, because he actually read all of my books, which is really nice of him to do. So I think, and I didn't get too slagged off for that. Actually, people seem to quite like the way I did the fight. So I think it's in the execution of the story, right? So you could sort of write that if you're writing a sexy book and you do it, and it might come across well, and it might come across not. So I think that's more about the writer. And to answer your question, not saying that I'm brilliant or anything like that, but that was the one thing, because I used to do martial arts, you see. So like in a room like this, I'd be standing up and I'd be okay. So if she cuts down there and then that blocks, so how then now we're going to turn and we're going to do that so she can parry there and she can come up, and I'll be sitting there and then I would write all this stuff out. To your point, those films are directed at guys, and guys like looking at boobs, and I just imagine that's why they were there. I mean, there's the one famous scene in Commando, isn't there, when Bill Duke and Arnie are fighting, and they burst through into a hotel room where a couple are having sex, and the girl just jumps out of bed. She's going, ooh, and it's completely pointless. But who's going to be watching Commando? Well, it's going to be guys in they're the late teens, early 20s, and we're all going to sit down and watch Commando, and there's a hot
Yeah,
chick, and
or Under
that's it.
Siege. I think it's
Or
Under
Under
Siege.
Siege, Under Siege. Yes, it
Where
is Under Siege, and that is a memorable Erica Eleniak.
I
Yes.
love that moment where she pops out of the cake, and I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, there's nobody there. I'm like, I guess she just has to pop out of the cake anyway. And she does. And it's so great. And then they put her in the film as someone who's fighting. Russ,
Yep.
they didn't have to do that. They did not have to do that. I thought about that and I said, I think that's very interesting that they made her kind of, play a part in this in addition to being incredible.
It's funny, isn't it? Because Seagal's characters have never had an arc, right? He starts off as a badass. He goes through the film as a badass, a badass that nothing affects, and then he ends the film as a badass that nothing. But actually, Erica Eleniak's character does go through a bit of an arc. Like she's like this Playboy model or whatever. She has to pick up a machine gun, and she's not very good, but she's kind of pivotal in the ultimate victory. So
Now,
yes.
interestingly enough, Russ,
Mhm.
one could argue, and this is a total reach and probably total bullshit, but one could argue that she knew if she popped out of that cake with no clothes on that she wasn't going to get shot.
Well, I think you might be right, because if I was a gun-toting terrorist and on a ship and she popped out of the cake like that, I certainly wouldn't be thinking about shooting her. So, she would have known. Either way, she was safe. She's bulletproof, Erica. She's absolutely bulletproof.
Absolutely. I think it was very interesting.
She was in Baywatch before Pammy. Pammy kind of took over from Erica Eleniak in Baywatch as Baywatch's hottest
She
lovely.
She was a little bit Gidget in Baywatch, if you will. I don't know if you know what I mean by Gidget, but somewhat more innocent, a beautiful woman, but didn't have the same sex appeal as some of the other ladies in the show, which is fine. Every woman is different, but she sure was a knockout in Under Siege. I think she was one of the most powerful characters in it because of what she could do, and of course, using that as a weapon and a defense. So that I'm sticking with that, Russ. I'm sticking with that as the justification for it, and I loved it. Jamin D talks about Bitter Harvest with Stephen Baldwin and Patsy Kensit.
I don't remember that one, but what was the comment before? Because that looked quite.
This one?
Someone's talking about sex thriller. I think what you're talking about sex thrillers is what we want in all genres. It's all about being fun and enjoyable. It's what we saw in Top Gun. Yeah, Plane. Yeah, I must watch Plane, Mike. Actually, I'm really looking forward to that. Precisely, it's all about good fun, and maybe this. Hey, Vickman, maybe this sort of social pressure, like we're reading in that interview there. Like about, oh well, it's about gender politics. Like forget that. Forget it's just fun movies. All right, we're having fun with this. I want to be entertained. I don't want to be. How many times have we said it on the channel? I don't want to go to the cinema to be told I'm a horrible person. So
Right.
there we go.
Absolutely. And I'm going to do the promo, and Wexler wants to know about your books, guys. Let's talk about your books for a second, Russ. Certainly, when we come back from the promo, I certainly do want to talk about that and make everybody aware. So I'm going to hit the promo now. Oh, yes. Okay.
You can't beat a bit of synthwave. I say it every week.
Guys, Mr. Wooksor, you can find out more about Russ's books on his website, russwhitfield.com. Russ is a well-known author of the Gladiatrix series. I got that correct this time, Russ.
Yeah, not
Um,
dominatrix.
so do check it out. If you want to know more about the books, you can go to his website. You can also speak to Darth Plato, who's a PGS member here, who has read the books and recommends them highly. It's a wonderful three series of books, Mr. Wuxer, that you absolutely should find, read them, and let us know what you think. They are available on Amazon. Check it out on russwhitfield.com,
Oh, you're
everybody.
you're too kind, or you're too kind. They're okay.
Mark has a dark side. Hello, goes dark side. Sorry, Mark goes dark side. Hello, everybody. Looking forward to some positive fandom. Well, you are in the right place. Mark goes dark side. Welcome to Positive Fandom. Oh, yes. Mario Lopez talks about the sex scene that Mickey Rourke did in Wild Orchid. Yes, and that scene, of course, was with Lisa Bonet. Am I correct, Russ?
No, Lisa Bonet one is in Angel Heart. Wild
Okay,
Orchid, I think, was Mickey Rourke in Wild Orchid?
I have to look it up.
Yeah, I think Mickey Rourke was 9.5 weeks with Kim Basinger, right? Wild
Yes.
Orchid had the guy that was in Kindergarten Cop. He was the baddie in Kindergarten Cop, I think was Wild Orchid, and Sherilyn Fenn or something like that.
Yes. It's Jacqueline Bisset
Oh no,
and
no, I'm not. I'm
Carrie
thinking of
Otis. Carrie
a different
Otis
one.
and Assumpta Serna, and it's directed by Zalman King. So I think we know that film, he's provided so much erotic art and movies for us. Thank you so much, Zalman King, for all those wonderful films that you've done. Yes, I believe it's Carrie Otis who is the star in this one. And that love scene that you're talking about. Mario Lopez, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, it was a real sex scene, and it certainly was it got a lot of attention in 1989 when it came out. Certainly a very pleasurable film, Mario. Let us know if you know more about it there in the chat. And um, Dark Plato says, not sure why the girl was in the cake was even there. The helicopter couldn't load unless they had a girl. Yeah, you know something, Darth Plato? I think that
I think
I think
anybody's thinking too deeply about why Erica Eleniak was there. It only matters that she was there.
I think she
It's
was
a
there
great
for
film.
fun, and I think the
Mm.
captain probably had her on board a few times, and some of the officers. I'm just going to say that. I am certainly not going to say there's anything wrong with that. I think that she was helping them get through those difficult times on the rough seas. So there, I said it. Um, Mark goes dark side says, I'm sure many men were shooting a different kind of load when she jumped out of that cake.
No, I'm
It
not.
was,
I wouldn't dream of commenting on such a thing.
I think there were a lot of women who were doing that too. Mark goes dark side. It was a pleasurable all around. Gee, why can't the world be more like that?
The
So that's
90s were a happier time.
it's such a happier time. Steven Seagal cracking skulls and this
Mhm.
beautiful woman popping out of the cake and then picking up a gun.
Yeah,
What could be any more perfect than that on an aircraft carrier destroyer, whatever they were on? Um, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, she was very sexy in Lethal Weapon 2. And if I remember correctly, gee, did she get killed in that? Did her
she
arm?
does. Yeah, that was the whole sort of
I
dislocating the shoulder
think
gag.
that he got
And
killed.
he finds her. He finds it. They drown her in the film. Patsy Kensit used to live in the next road to me.
Oh,
Patsy's from Hounslow. Well, she certainly grew up in Hounslow.
oh
But
my
I didn't
God.
know her. I didn't know. I'm not. It's not like a claim to fame of me and Patsy are like good mates. But she certainly lived down the road from where I did in Hounslow. Yeah.
That is great to know, Russ. That Jamin D says, remember silk stockings? Of course I remember silk
Of
stockings.
course. Yeah.
I remember a lot of wonderful moments on silk stockings. He says, oh, how I miss that one. You can't have that type of show anymore. Maybe it's going to come back. Jamin D, I'm waiting for the network that is willing to take a chance. It should be HBO that could take a chance on something like
Tim
this.
Stalkins, there was Femme Fatales, there was the Red Shoes, the Red Shoe Diaries, wasn't there?
Diaries with David
Yeah.
Duchovny, right?
No, I can't remember. I just remember it was like an ensemble, not like an
Yes,
ensemble show. Like every week was a different story. What do they call that?
yes.
Like an epic.
Anthology.
Anthology. Thank you. They were not connected at all. Oh
And
yes.
everybody remembers this. Jennifer Connelly in the hot spot with Don Johnson. It certainly was a memorable experience. I thought it was a beautiful film. I personally, Robert has some very interesting memories of the film. You know, he talks about how everybody was shocked on it, but I thought it was great. I think it was beautiful. I think Jennifer Connelly looked beautiful then, and she looks incredibly beautiful now.
I think in that one, I think it was actually you kind of saw literally everything, and I think that was the big shock. If it's the one when they're on the beach and she turns around and all that stuff. I mean, that was, ooh, you know, like that was even in the sort of erotic thrillers from the DVD or from the video shop you'd get in those days. They were never like that, and I think that was a real wow. Okay, they went there, and that was brilliant.
And we have Latoya T with us today. Hello. She says, good morning, brunchers. Hello to you, Latoya T. Guys, check out Coco Tulip, Latoya T fashion line. Latoya T is a fashion designer and, of course, a member of the PGS and part of this community. So good to see you, Latoya T. It is such a pleasure to see you here this morning. We also have Gary Smith. Howdy, folks. Well, howdy
Hi,
to you,
Gary.
Gary. Howdy. How are you? Gosh, good to.
You've joined us for X-rated Sunday brunch. Who knew we were going to go there? I didn't know we were going to go. I thought we were talking about something else, but I'm here for it, man.
Thank you, Maria Lopez. It was Carrie Otis, and she was lovely in Wild Orchid. Certainly, just a beautiful. Yeah, maybe Leslie Ann Warren was in it. I see Jacqueline Bissett. Yeah, maybe Leslie Ann Warren was in it. If she was, I hope she was nude. I'm sorry. But I just do. I think it's great to have, you know, these sort of mature scenes and, you know, just kind of enjoy it. Yes. Gee, wow, Tom Jr. Jackson, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry she was hospitalized for pneumonia.
No.
I hope she will have recovered from that. So let's hope she's okay. Darth Plato says the Battleship Missouri. Is that
That's the one from Under Siege, yeah.
Well, you know, they needed a bar called that. And
Casey Ryback.
it's right.
Steven Seagal, yeah.
Oh yes. Well, Gary Bando Sandwich Worthington is let us know earlier that he was filming a video in Chinatown, and now he has finished his new Chinese New Year video back on the Filthy here, of course. And guys, check out Gary's channel. He does have videos of his travels and things that he does. So certainly, something to think about going forward. It would be great to see that. Now, I did want to say, Russ, you and I were going to talk about one other thing, and I can't help, and I really would love to talk about this, what you and I are talking about now all day long. Like, I don't want to stop talking about what we're talking about. Clearly, I think it's incredibly important. And I don't know. I can't even speak. I'm talking about a show that premiered last Sunday night on HBO Max, something that you saw. Gee, I'm so sorry that we're not going to be talking about sex anymore, guys. I apologize. But something that you saw, and you have been telling me that you absolutely enjoyed this show.
Yeah, we can get onto that. There were two things that I wanted to mention before we closed off with Last of Us. But first of all, I have bad news. I read in THR that the next season of Cobra Kai will be the last season of Cobra Kai, and this is what we have been hoping for and asking for, and you know, fingers crossing for, because as we've said many times, Cobra Kai has kind of run its course. You know, it's 5 years old now, and there are no, you know, there's one more cameo they can do if they can convince Hilary Swank to come back, and that's it. And then it's played out, and it's a brilliant show, and we love and I've loved every episode of every season, and I'm so happy that the writers have delivered once again and just turned around and said, no, that's it, we're done. There is no more after this, after this season, because I think it would start to become a bit crap. Dare I say, where are you going to take them after this? Like, things need to be resolved. You know, we've got Terry Silver, we've got Kreese. Kreese is going to plot his revenge. Terry Silver's going to become unstuck, and all of that stuff. Yeah, never dies, man. But I'm glad it's ending. I really am.
And it's the same for Stranger Things, Russ. That's another series that may have run, I believe, has run its course. That the next season is time to call it quits. Unfortunately, however,
I don't know if they announced that though, but I certainly saw that this is an official announcement. You know, this is our last season. We are finished, and that's
it
great. I love
is.
that.
It is, and I am going to be talking about that tomorrow. That's my third topic on Ladies of the PGS. That season 6 of Cobra Kai is the finale. But gee, Russ, what a run they've had on Cobra Kai! And hello, Rogue Thinker. Morning to
Hey,
you.
Rogue.
And also Anti-Derivative Jill. Good
Hey,
morning
Jill.
to you, Anti-Derivative Jill. Such a pleasure to see you here along with Rogue Thinker. I think both of those shows, although you are right, they did not announce that Stranger Things would be ending, but I think both you and I could see the writing on the wall, Russ. It needs to wrap up the next season as far as I'm concerned, and Cobra Kai did have the writing on the wall, and I am not upset by this, guys. We have gotten hours upon hours upon hours of Cobra Kai pleasure. I can't. I could probably, stay in at home for 2 or 3 weeks watching Cobra Kai if I wanted to just indulge and, have that nostalgia rush. No cocktails needed. It has really provided us with a lot of feel good scenes, so many interesting twists and turns. And there's been some filler, but for the most part, I really have been enjoying Cobra Kai. And so I think I can let it go, Russ. It's been a great run. I think it's been very cleverly done. And we haven't really seen anything like this reboot of the Karate Kid franchise.
Oh, well, look, I mean, everybody has said it is the template. This is how you do it. This, like we've had many, 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 many attempts at revitalizing and redoing properties that have all fallen prey to Hollywood producing fluctuations and biases and things like that. So the characters that you love get denigrated, and the ones that you don't care about get elevated, and Cobra Kai just doesn't play that game. It just doesn't do it, and everything is treated with like the bits when they talk about sort of Pat Morita and Mr. Miyagi, that whole bit when Daniel goes to the grave, and like he's a guy, he's my age. Well, he's actually older than me, isn't he? He's a lot older than I am, actually. Well, not a lot older, but he's when he goes to the grave and you get that sort of like the Japanese pipe music and the Miyagi theme when he's sitting there, and Miyagi's like the one guy that he can be a lost kid in front of again, and he's like, I'm older than you were back then, and you seem to have everything figured out. What were you doing? Did you really know, or was I just impressionable? I don't know how to advise these guys. It's such a heartfelt moment, and it's it's in a comedy show, a teen drama, whatever, and it's treated with reverence and respect. And then you've got Johnny, and it's chef's kiss, and I'm so glad that they're finishing it off. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I saw today the trailer for Darkness Over Gotham, which is the next DC animated movie to come out with Batman in it. It's based on a comic. It's sort of like Batman versus H.P. Lovecraft in 1920s Gotham. So you're gonna see the deep ones, and you're gonna have Etrigan and Jason Blood and all that kind of thing. And it looks like one thing about DC, man. I don't care what era we're talking about. Ever since the 90s, they have been nailing their animated stories, obviously with Batman the animated series and Superman and Justice League. And then we went into this sort of period of them. They kicked off with Superman versus Doomsday, which is probably their weakest one. It was like they were finding their feet. And then they went into the Tuckerverse, where they tackled the New 52, and we had all of those movies, and they were all great. They were brilliant. And now we've kicked off into this like Tomorrowverse. We started off with Superman, and then we had Batman, The Long Halloween, and we had the John Stewart movie, which was really good. And now I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely, Russ. Certainly, it is something to think about. I think that is wonderful that we're seeing more series coming out. Those animated series were highly successful, and everybody is telling me I need to watch because they were so good. And good morning to you, Gary Smith, who says Tom 7:30 is when I wake up. Well, hello, Gary Smith. Good morning to you, and welcome to Sunday Brunch. And Tom, thank you so much for reminding everybody 9:30 tonight. PM Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. We're going to have a live watch party right here on Positive Fandom for The Last of Us Part 2. Absolutely, you can watch it live or the replay. Thank you, Tom, for putting that out. And of course, tomorrow night on the Brrrr Network at 6 p.m. For our show, Ladies of the PGS as well. But Russ, you make a good point about what you're saying. Certainly, we're seeing different series continue, and we need to see that creativity continue for that. I certainly have to play catch up because I haven't seen a lot of these animated series, and everybody keeps talking about how fantastic they are. I feel like I'm really missing out, Russ.
Oh yeah, I've seen them over and over again because I got Sam into superheroes when she was little. So we sat and we watched Justice League so many times. And there's all this often been talk about how Snyder handles Superman and how Singer handles Superman and all that sort of thing. And kind of the template has been there. Why Bruce Timm and that lot weren't brought in to manage the DC extended universe. I mean, look, I love Snyder, you know that. But equally, I would have loved it if they'd have just brought Bruce Timm in and they just made live action Justice League as they'd written it, because they nailed all of those characters. Like, they absolutely smashed it in terms of characterization. It's the Superman that everybody wanted, and because it's obviously a TV series, there was progression. So Superman sort of started out bright and idealistic as he was, but he's a bit more grim and grumpy in Justice League, certainly in Justice League Unlimited, as Darth Plato points out. He has to fight with Darkseid and all that. It's good stuff. But yeah, good segue. The Last of Us.
Yes, The Last of Us. I'm sorry, Russ, I didn't have anything ready to put up there, or else I would have put it.
Don't worry, it's fine.
But yes, The Last of Us, guys. As you know, I loved this video game. I still love it. I love everything about The Last of Us. And it premiered last Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on HBO Max. The television adaptation of the highly successful Part 1 video game for The Last of Us is finally now a series. And they did some cast changing and rearranging. Certainly, what did you think, Russ? I don't know if you ever played the video game, but what did you think of this premiere show on HBO Max?
Well, I'm not a gamer, so I think I've said before, I've got two games. I've got Aliens, Colonial Marines, and I've got Rome Total War. And I can't remember the last time I played Colonial Marines, or I play Rome Total War every so often. But I do know the story of The Last of Us, because I remember not so much The Last of Us 1, but I remember that our corner of the internet, or one of the corners of the internet that I sit in, perhaps not our one, but they had a meltdown over The Last of Us Part 2. And so I know the story of what happens in both of the games, in fact. But when it comes to Easter eggs and things that I should be looking out for, and homages that they've paid to things, that is all gonna be lost on me. So I'm watching this purely as a thing I kind of know a little bit about, and I kind of know how it's going to end, and I'm a little bit familiar with it. And I was blown away by this show, and I think Pedro Pascal is a divisive character in that he's got a lot to say about his politics and all that sort of thing, and that is I think that switched a lot of people off him and potentially this show. However, his performance in this show is absolutely stand out. He was entirely believable to me as the character that he was portraying, and there he is with his daughter. So, because as I say, I know what's going to happen in the game, but I thought that some of the decisions they made to hook you into this show were brilliant. I was entirely invested in this young actress. I thought it was a shame they didn't have a Latina actress, sort of a full Latina actress play her. I just thought that's a bit of, that's typical Hollywood casting. But that aside, she was fucking outstanding. She was brilliant. She had me entirely engaged in her, entirely invested in her. She's a brilliant actress, and I knew what was going. I knew it had to happen because I know that she's not the person that he ends up looking after. So she's going to go, right. And oh shit, should we put spoilers up, by the way?
Yeah, maybe I will do that. So let me get my banner up. So let's do that.
Yeah. Oh, you had it already. Yeah. So obviously, I knew that she was not going to be part of the narrative for longer, and I was devastated. Like I really loved her performance. I loved her character, and yes, fantastic. I was really impressed with some of the directorial choices. That what I loved, the one shot that really got me was when Joel and his and Tommy and the girl get into the truck, and he's got the bumper sticker on his truck says veteran, Gulf War veteran. So there was no explaining of like, oh well, when you were back in the Gulf and blah blah. It was none of that. It's like, oh, we know, we are okay. So the guy's a Marine, brilliant. So now we've already explained in one shot how this guy knows how to handle himself. I thought that despite the, you separate the person from the art, I guess. Pascal was fucking brilliant in this show. He covered the gamut of emotions from caring dad to worried person to person afraid of his life. When he lost the girl, like my God, that was scene, but that was heartrending. And then he goes psycho when he's reminded of that situation again. And and you think that guy that he attacks is his mate. Yeah, I was thoroughly engaged. Like, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want it to end. I was. Let's hope it continues in the manner that it started. So Rogue says, I hope this show is good and makes beneficial changes to the story. The number of girl bosses so far in the show has me worried, though. Maybe, but I don't have any basis on which to worry about it, Rogue. So it's kind of like, okay, is that accurate to the film? I know to the game. I know that he goes and he's tasked to do a job with Ellie. Now he's got to take Ellie to wherever he's got to take her by a couple of ladies that are leaders of the Fireflies, the terrorist group, whatever you want to call them. But none of it seemed out of whack to me. I really, really, really enjoyed it, and it does seem to me that so far Pedro Pascal is the man. The T and the capital T and the capital M, and he's definitely the lead. And he's taciturn and stoic and strong and dangerous and grumpy. Maybe that will get usurped. I mean, I think a lot of commentators have said, well, it's Druckmann, so you don't know what's going to happen down the road because he was the one that wrecked The Last of Us 2 with his advocacy and all the rest of it. But so far, you got to call it like you see it, man. I got no complaints. I thought it was fucking brilliant.
Absolutely. And Thalia Mayer, the girl who plays Sarah is her daughter. Her name is Nico Parker. So you're spot on that. And I'm sure, Thalia, when you were watching it, you were like, gee, she looks so much like Thandie Newton. And I kept saying that over and over again. It's her daughter, Nico Parker, who's amazing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. And Rogue Thinker, the number of girl bosses in the show is the exact same as in the video game. So did you play the video game? I don't know if you liked the video game. Maybe you didn't like it for that reason as well. Some people didn't like the video game. So if you may not like it if you played it, you didn't like the number of girl bosses or women in it. You won't like the show. That might be, your factor of liking it or disliking it. But it's the exact same as in the video game, almost to a flaw. In fact, the woman who plays the Firefly is the woman who voices that role. She's a big character in this story. And so, she's the resistance leader, certainly, is an important part in the story. So just be aware, Rogue Thinker. I don't know if you play the game. I play the game. So I know who and how it works there.
Girl bosses are not a problem, are they? So Gary says here, why a girl boss is a problem? Well, I guess Rogue can answer that for himself, but I don't think they are a problem. Most of the stuff I write has female leads. I was doing it before it was cool in 2008, man. I'm just going to say that. But no, like I don't think it's a problem. And it's, look, I am not the first person to say this, Gal. It's not that girl bosses are a problem. It's the fact that in order to be a girl boss, you don't need to denigrate every man around you. That's the problem with the girl boss. It's not that there's a problem with girl bosses. It's how they're written you know, and they're so very rarely in modern entertainment written as women. They're normally just guys with boobs, you know, that don't really have much in the way of female outlook or female emotions or what a woman would do in a given situation. Like you know, Rita will tell you, I've spoken to her so many times about this. What would you do in this situation? You know, how would a woman react to this? I remember when I was writing this one revenge thriller, and there's some really violent kills in it, right? This, you know, like I was shocked, um, not at myself, but by saying this is the premise, this is the setup. How, and you got hold of one of these guys, what would you do to him? And most of the feedback I got from women was about it was like I'd want him to know it was me. I'd want him to know why, and I'd want him to suffer. I don't just want to shoot this person. I want this person to know, and I want the suffering to go on so that he will know what he's taken from me. And that wasn't just Sally, you know, looking at me and thinking about our marriage. It was like lots of women, lots of women, lots of women said that. So yeah, so in the terms of girl bosses, no, I don't think anybody has a problem with girl bosses, but it's the way that they're written and the fact that Hollywood producers, you know, I'm going to try and defend the writers. I'm sure it's not just the writers. They have a, they want to denigrate the men around them. That's the problem, and it's no
Yes,
need.
and Rogue Thinker and of course Gary, guys, please continue the discussion. We welcome that, you know, like different points of view. We're glad that you're here to bring those points out. We appreciate it. Just so you know, so glad that you're here with us this morning. Mario Lopez says Pedro Pascal is a great actor. Unfortunately, I don't care what actors say. It's better when they don't talk too much. It's very interesting. And also, yeah, Rogue Thinker mentions about toning down the macho. Now, I do want to say something about this Rogue Thinker, and this is just in the video game. For part one, is that Joel is kind of a quiet character in the story. He's not as over the top, if you will, as Pedro Pascal. And what do I mean by that? Joel is an ordinary, average guy who is a combat veteran, as you said, Russ, but he seems to keep to himself and is, you know, kind of low key. He's not as, dare I say, noticeable as Pedro Pascal is. You know, if Pedro Pascal walks in a room, every woman is going to be, you know, kind of looking at him. But Joel, the character in the video game, was not that type of a figure, nor was he presented that way. Pedro Pascal is incredibly good looking. You know, it's meant to draw your eye to him and look at him as a somewhat more sexual person, but also they needed a star for the story. They needed a star, right, Russ? You
Yeah,
needed
I
to have
think
a
so.
star play this. So you couldn't just have, you know, someone who was unknown or didn't have a star quality to them to it. But in the game, Joel is, you know, an ordinary man who has incredible, you know, military and special forces skills, more or less. And that's what helps him to survive a lot of situations, I guess, going forward. I could be somewhat wrong in what his qualifications are, but they made a point, as you said, Russ, to show that it's a combat
It was
veteran.
brilliant. It was
And
brilliant. It's so
yeah,
well done. No exposition required. We get it. We understand that. We got it.
so
Also, Gabriel
Rogue,
Luna was good.
yes, and I'm sorry, Rogue Thinker, I'm expecting to see a more aggressive Joel in this, like what we saw already in episode one, where he just lets that guy have it, where he's just, you know, beating up the soldier. I'm expecting to see a lot more of that because we have to see that physical ability from Joel. In the video game, it's different. You know, you press punch, someone punches. You press kick, someone kicks. But we need to see a lot of physical ability here from Pascal in a way we kind of saw it in The Mandalorian, but there were doubles there. We're going to see, and I'm hoping to see more physical abilities from Pascal. He looks very strong and fit.
Mm.
He's older, but I want to see this mature man kick some serious ass in the show when Ellie turns to him, Russ, when Ellie turns to Joel and she says, I have never been out in the danger zone. I've never been out in this place where you know, we can get killed. And she turns to him and she says, are we going to be okay? And do you know what Pedro Pascal says? He says, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, because he's going to go through no matter what happens in the story. He's going to make sure that they get through this. This is going to be the most amazing thing that we see,
Hmm.
just like in the game, Russ. We are going to be so impressed with what Pedro can do here that we're going to be like, oh my God, oh my God. It's just, I'm telling you, Russ, that's what I'm expecting. That was we need to see what is it, the payoff from that comment, Russ,
Hmm.
because it's telling us right there that we're going to see stuff that's unbelievable that Pedro is going to deliver here. So have no fear. I suspect that we are going to see it's, yes, it will be incredibly violent. But I have a feeling we're going to see some things that are just going to be like, oh my gosh. Now that's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm hoping for. I haven't seen it. I haven't screened it before. I'm watching it along with you all, but I expect with a comment like that, Russ, that they're not just baiting us with something that's false. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems to be very, very well written so far. Um, very, very well acted so far. And look, it looks like they're putting all the building blocks in place. And I'm not going to be disappointed by what the lack or lack thereof of what's going on in the game, because it's completely lost on me. I'm never going to understand all the nuances and how good that fungus thing is, and if that's how it works. I don't care about that. And I understand some people will care about that, because I'm a huge fan of the Resident Evil movies, which Resident Evil gamers hate, but the Resident Evil movie watchers love because they're crap. This is not that. This seems to be taking itself extremely, extremely seriously. It is a drama slash horror slash sci-fi slash post-apocalyptic tale of parenthood and replacing, not replacing, but finding that you can care for a child again even after you've lost your own. um which for anybody that's had kids is a fucking huge thing to, I can't imagine it. I can't imagine the thought of it just upsets me
Now,
so much.
now, Russ,
So
I have to tell you that when I was playing this video game, I'm sorry to interrupt. When I first played the
no,
video
no, no.
game, I did not understand that Ellie became a surrogate daughter to him. I didn't understand that. I didn't know that was going to happen because I
Mm,
hadn't seen the story yet. I didn't know anything about it. So I didn't know that that's what would happen. Obviously, everybody has this expectation now. We saw the flash of him with his daughter and how,
mm,
let's say, I'm not going to say he hesitated, but he was trusting that that military person was not going to shoot at them. He trusted them.
mm,
And he wasn't going to make that same mistake twice, Russ. And we saw that, but it's pretty clear. It's very clear from the storytelling, Russ, that nothing is going to stop him from protecting Ellie. Nothing.
mm,
Absolutely nothing. We saw that. He will never hesitate again. And she saw that. She was shocked. She maybe has never seen anything like this. And honestly, I love seeing how strong Pedro Pascal looked, how masculine he looked, seeing him just go at it. It was as satisfying for me, I'm sure, as it was for Ellie and maybe for a lot of other women who love seeing that. Oh, thank you, men. Thank you, you guys out there. We love you so much.
yeah, well, this is it. And it's not, it's not toxic, is it?
No.
He's kicking ass. He's a guy, he's a man doing a man's thing in a man's world with his, it's almost like a Wild West thing, and he's kicking ass, and he's a violent guy and all
Yeah.
of that. But he's a caring man. He's a guy that will care about you and love you and protect you and look after you. And I think that's a fucking brilliant archetype to have. So yeah, as to what we were talking about before with the girl bosses stuff, I hope they don't sort of pull the rug out. I hope they stick to the truth of this character and the truth of this story, and let's just see how it goes. But yeah, we do want violence, Gal. We do. Um, yeah, and yes, he should have stopped posing, and then he would have beaten the mountain. Let's see what Renz is saying here.
Hi, Renz. I'm sorry to
Love,
get your face. Sorry.
yeah, love the introduction about the fungus. It wasn't in the game, but they added it to a better understanding of viewers who hadn't played the game. It was one of the best pilot episodes so far. I have to say that scene with John Hannah in the '60s was brilliant. It was such a great introduction to it, and it's like, and yeah, okay, they've got a little bit of their social commentary in there. What if the world gets warmer? Well, guess what? The world did get warmer, and this is what this is, an I guess a climate change allegory. I don't know. You can take that from it, but you can also just take that this is a kick-ass action horror show, and I'm there for it, man. I'm loving it. I didn't expect to love it, and this has been the thing. This has been the thing in late 2022 and early 2023. I've been made to watch shows that I would never have watched if not for this channel, and they've been fucking brilliant. Like Andor, like House of the Dragon, and now The Last of Us. Think, and especially with this one, because let's be honest with you, having heard the reports on The Last of Us 2 and knowing Druckmann and Druckmann's advocacy and activism and all of that kind of stuff, I think people were fearing the worst. I think people were fearing the worst, that this was just going to be, we were going to sit down and a certain demographic, of which I'm a part, were going to be lectured to and spat on and told that it was all our fault and we were terrible, and it's just not that. It's just not that. And I love Tommy. I love Joel. I'm singing its praises, man. It's really, really good.
Man, you remember this young actress from Lord of the Rings, the not House of the Dragon, but the other one, Game of Thrones. She played the girl who killed the mountain, the white mountain troll or the mountain creature. She killed him by stabbing him in the eye or something like that.
Don't
and
remember.
and now she's back and she's wonderful in it. And the woman who plays Tess was in Fringe. I don't know if you watched Fringe. She was also in another story that I loved called with the guy from Altered Carbon. I can't remember the name of the show, but it was a fantastic show that she was in. She played a cop and he was her. I think it was her. But the point is that she was wonderful in Fringe. It was a sci-fi show that was very popular here in the US. That was enjoyable. Now, the other thing I want to mention to you, Russ, is that there had been some criticism about not from the TV show, but in the game that Russ is an older, not Russ. Joel is a man who is an older person, and he's doing a lot of physical activity. So I thought that this was pretty important, that we are seeing a mature man, because what a lot of people don't realize is that there's also something called experience. And when we watch special forces movies, it's usually men who are in their 40s who are doing these missions that we're watching. Guys who have 10, 15 years of experience in the field. They're not going to take a bunch of rookie special forces guys in their 20s and throw them out there and make a film. No, it's usually a bunch of guys who have the special forces beard, Russ. They've been around the block a few times, and I think that we can kind of get this focus, this idea of the importance of the experience that older men have that they can apply in a real life situation. So yes, I am talking about Fringe. Thank you so much, Gary Smith. Yes, I believe that's her who plays Tess. So there is that. But Russ, the focus on, or at least showing something where the man is a mature man. He's not 20, Russ. What happened with him and his daughter happened 20 years ago. What do you think about them deciding to have Joel as this physical beast, if you will? He's the only one that can take her out there so that she makes it through, Russ. It can't be somebody who's younger. This is not age bashing, but it can't be somebody who doesn't have this experience, Russ. What do you think about the focus, not just on the game, but in the series, of mature men and their abilities here as well?
It's interesting what you say about the special forces and stuff like that. I've been doing research for things, and I remember once reading, when you see soldiers on screen and you see actual soldiers in combat, what are the actual real soldiers who were sort of answering these questions, saying, the one thing you'll be really surprised about is, like, everybody in the army is really, really young. Most of these combat soldiers are like young guys, like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Like the sergeant's going to be like 25 or something like that. But of course, in films, it works a little bit differently. I think it's fantastic. This kind of got mocked. It almost became a genre in and of itself, didn't it? With the Expendables and Taken and all that kind of, like the Jerry actioner. And as we were talking about erotic thrillers with 90s actresses, or 90s and 2000 actresses, if we could revitalize that, this is the same kind of thing, isn't it? It's just saying, look, all right, he's 50, but he's not past it yet. 50 is the new 40. These guys can still do stuff. They're still relevant. They're still, and I think maybe the audience can identify them with a little identify with them a little bit more, because with the vast majority of the youth of today, I would guess, and I have no statistics, but I would imagine this is true, long form entertainment like this isn't really directed at young teens or late teens and 20s people now. It's more directed at the older audience, because most of those guys are watching TikToks and they're watching YouTube, and they're not really, or they're playing the game, they're not sitting down and watching it. So I wonder if there's a little bit about that in there, but this is certainly game accurate, right? I imagine there would have been outcry if you had a got some young fresh 20 something dude playing Joel. Everyone going, oh, they've ruined it. Joel needs to be Joel, and it's entirely accurate, and Pascal is nailing it.
Yeah, it's something to think about. And I did, as you know, I do a show called Toxic Male Appreciation, guys,
Hmm.
with Lorena, because we love men and we enjoy everything about men, honestly. But this figure, and I think that there can't be anything more masculine than this character that Pedro Pascal is playing. And I think it's very important for us to see honestly, the power that men have in this. I know that one of the viewers were saying that they were afraid of the female bosses, but if I remember from the gameplay, it's pretty much Joel and Ellie here. And it's a dangerous world, and we see a lot of the male. Like if you watch the trailer, Russ, and the coming attractions after episode 1, there's a lot of male bosses in there, right, Russ? You see a
I
lot of
did.
men.
I didn't watch it. I turned it off as soon as it had finished, because I was actually watching it early in the morning before I started work. Because for me, it'll be tomorrow. I'm not going to sit up and watch it tonight. But Darth Plato makes a point here. After several years of Twitter and Hollywood acting like a modern day Saint-Cloud, people have a right to be guarded. Yeah, they do. We're enthusing here and we're excited here. Maybe we've been spoiled with House of the Dragon and Andor and things like that, and Cobra Kai. And you're right, they do have a right to be guarded, but based on the evidence of what we've seen so far, I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'm hoping that it continues down the road that it's going down. And even if it even yeah, he was the Terminator, wasn't he? He was in Dark Fate. Is that Gabriel Luna? Is that his name? Is that Gabriel
Yeah,
Luna?
I believe it
Yeah, yeah.
is. I believe it is him. I'm sorry, I don't have the
Yeah,
names.
and I wonder, like people hated The Last of Us 2, didn't they? Or some people hated The Last of Us 2 because apparently it was woke, and because Ellie had grown up to be a lesbian, and then they had the girl boss.
He's always
uh,
a lesbian, even in the first
Oh,
season.
I don't know. I'm not gonna I'm
Well,
not
I'm
gonna
just letting you know.
comment on it, but people had a problem with it. They had a problem with lots of things with it, with the second one. But I'm wondering, even if they do roll into The Last of Us 2 as part of this series, if that particular things that gamers had issues with, and gamers had issues with the decisions that were made in the game, if they would translate better to the screen, maybe it'll play out in not such a way that'll upset the gamers as it did when they were playing the game. That's just purely
Well,
theory on my part.
it was a combination of things. And Rogue Thinker, I am going to get to your comment. And thank you for sharing everything, Rogue Thinker. We do appreciate you here. Um, it was a combination of things because, unfortunately, when part 2 came out, and we waited forever. It was like 7 years for this game. Like
Hmm.
we were all waiting for this game, like literally waiting for it. And when it came out, I was not able to play the game. I was working. There was something else going on in the
Mm.
world
Mm.
that prevented me from doing anything else other than working, let's say, pretty much, unless in the middle of the night, which is why I started to stream at 3 a.m. in the morning. But that's another story. But the point is, what's my point here? Um, when part 2 first came out, there was a problem with YouTube and YouTubers talking about it. And there was a lot of unfair things that happened. And I think that was more profound than just saying you think the game sucks. Then the game sucks. Not every game is going to be great. Not every sequel is great. It wasn't what I hoped for. This is terrible. I can go on with my life. But there were things that were done that hit people economically that were unfair. And so for me, that was more important than the game being crappy, because honestly, I just like the terror element of the second part of the game. I didn't think there needed to be a second game made, honestly. After a
Mm.
while, I had played the first game so many times over and over again. And I thought to myself, you know what? This game doesn't even need another one because it's so spectacular. Now, if they bring in some of these elements from The Last of Us Part 2, I'm not quite sure I would be happy about it. But I don't even think I care anymore because I was so happy from what I've seen so far. If they give me a few episodes where I feel like that represents the first game, or at least the feeling of the first game, which had 40 to 60 hours of gameplay to it, I would be happy. And then I wouldn't watch the rest of it if it was something that I didn't want to see, some other parts of the story that don't need to be told, as far as I'm concerned. But that's how I feel about it. And I haven't really felt about that way about a lot of IPs, Russ, but I can honestly say this one because I can always go back to the game and replay it or watch it. People have some great walkthroughs there. If I want to see that story the way it was told, there's some things that they couldn't adapt for the screen. Wearing gas masks all the time is not realistic for a television show. So that was probably something that they've gotten rid of. But in the game, you have to put it on when you see the spores, and they make a point of showing you spores in the sunlight. There's a reason why you need to see that, because as soon as you see it, you normally throw a gas mask on. But I didn't necessarily feel that. And you're right, Mario. That's what I'm alluding to. I wasn't necessarily want to bring all the sad part about it, but it hit people economically. And what happened was something was done on YouTube that hit them economically, or could the potential of pulling down channels. That was not a good time, not a good move. And to be honest,
I remember the drinker was talking about a company called
yeah,
Disobedient Canine and
yeah, and
things like
so
that, because you weren't allowed to and so
yeah.
I'm sorry, as I say, I'm not really a gamer. I could be. I'm sorry if I misspoke, but
Oh
I
no,
remember
you
that.
did not misspeak. It's fine. It's totally fine. You can say whatever you want. Rogue Thinker says, I have no problem with female bosses. I love watching females kick ass on screen or small. I'm worried. Yeah, you know something, Rogue Thinker? A lot of people are worried about where the show is going. You're not the only one. As I said, I hope it really does give us the payoff. For me, I need to see Joel kick ass here. I need to see Pedro Pascal really perform here. I can't wait for it.
I'm
So
sure
thank
you'd
you,
like
Rogue
to see
Thinker.
Pedro Pascal perform. Or
Well,
it's
we
all
did
got very Freudian on Positive Fandom today. We have retros talking about hoes. You want Pedro to perform. I'm talking about Under Siege, and it's all going Pete Tong. We should close the show.
Well, hello, Bonzo Kilborn. You missed a lot, Bonzo. Just rewind the hour and 45 minutes, but it's good to
Catch it
see
in
you.
a re-one.
Certainly glad to see you. And of course, yes, there was a problem with that. So you know what's interesting, and Mario, I'm not going to necessarily show too much about it, only because Neil has not gone anywhere. Neil Druckmann created this fantastic story, and regardless of what happened after that, I still love this story. This,
Mhm.
he can't change the first part, and it's long enough and interesting enough that they could have 5 seasons dealing with just part one. But I think we know there are going to be changes. So, with that being said, I don't know what those changes will be. However, right now things seem pretty much the story they need to be. Let's see how it goes. Um, I think, Russ, that we're going to be pleasantly surprised with what happens. This is his brother Tommy in the story, and
Mhm.
of course, unfortunately, something does happen to his to the daughter played by Thandwi Newton's daughter here, Nico Parker, who does a wonderful job of playing this role.
She
They did,
was she was fucking brilliant, and the writing was brilliant, and her depiction was brilliant. And like, if you didn't know what was going to happen, I cannot imagine what a kick in the guts that scene was. Like, that was mental. She really killed it. That kid, she really, really killed it. I was very, very impressed.
well, Russ, if you like the writing, then you like Neil Druckmann's work, because a lot of this was Neil Druckmann. There's another writer involved, I'm sure. I'm not saying that is only Neil, but this was his creation, his idea from the very beginning. When you watch it, where they're talking about the sports, he was inspired. He and another creator were inspired by the idea that these this parasitic worm. It's a parasite. He plants a
Mm.
worm into an ant. I think that's what it is, or it might be a wasp. Anyway, what happens is once the parasite implants the egg into, let's say, the ant, the creature grows inside of the ant's body, and the ant can't function normally. He
It
stops
takes over
thinking.
its brain. This is like, it's absolutely horrific, and then it starts. I think this is where they got the idea for aliens. Alien. I think this is where this came from as well. So,
Yes.
but I just need to address Rogue here. Yeah, but we were talking about Erica Eleniak, And Hard to Kill doesn't have Erica Eleniak. It has Kelly. Oh come on, Weird Science. Kelly.
Oh, I
Uh,
know who that is. She's great.
Kelly. What's her surname?
Thingberg.
LeBrock. Kelly LeBrock. It has her, but she doesn't jump out of a cake and do a striptease. So
No,
that's why Under Siege wins.
agreed. And of course, as I said, this is Nico Parker, who is Thandie Newton's daughter, Thandie Newton, this great actress. This young lady here is Bella Ramsey, who plays Ellie. And of course, as I said to you, Russ, I did want to mention they talk about her encounter with a young girl. I think it might have been Emily. I can't remember the girl's name, but I'm not going to spoil why what happens, but it's more than just a friendship. So that was from day one, guys. How we got a flashback and how that happened. So there was that, and we learned that she obviously was in a safe place, but now she's not. Somehow she's in this town with everybody, and the Fireflies are like, well, you're not even supposed to be here. So something's gone wrong.
They did reveal that though, didn't they? They basically said that the girl that's in charge of the Fireflies, she dropped this Ellie off at the military training place when she was a baby for reasons. Now, I having watched The Drinker and everybody talk about this, I know what the reason is. But yeah, so she's had some sort of training and all that, so she's not kind of randomly there, and then they had to go and get her out, didn't they? So yeah.
Yeah, and essentially, and I don't necessarily have to go too deep into it, Russ, but
Yeah,
you're right.
we should be a bit even actually. Do you know what I'm going to say on behalf of myself? Because although I know basically what happens, and I know what happens at the end of this story, um, you know, I still want to be surprised by it. So I'm kind of going to be avoiding it a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, but let's just say that she, in the first, television program, we learned that Ellie, who's played by, who's she played by? I'm so sorry, guys. Bella Ramsey, who was in Game of
Game of
Thrones.
Thrones, yeah.
We learned that her character is not supposed to be there right now. She's supposed to be, and hi, bye for the Hobbit. She's supposed to be safe and tucked away somewhere, but that's not what's happened. Um, no worries, Rogue Thinker. We're so glad you're here, Rogue Thinker.
I'm glad we're on the same page, Rogue. You know, a performance of that caliber, that magnitude, and that look has to be commended.
It certainly puts you at attention.
It certainly did.
And Ellie is lucky because she's kind of been, from what they imply, although they don't necessarily say it, she's kind of been protected prior to this. And this is
Yeah.
her first time even interacting with anybody, because if you remember, she says something like, wow, I'm outside. And her reaction is exactly the same way a teenager would be like, oh my God, do we get to go to, like she's this
Yeah.
teenager that you expect to see a teenage girl, and they're like, shh, quiet.
Yeah, you're gonna get us killed, right?
Yeah, and I
Oh,
think
sorry, it just occurred to me, Aram, on a completely different topic. You know, we were talking about Shogun last week. I started
yeah,
to watch Shogun.
yeah.
I tried to get Sam into it. She just said, "Oh, it's crap. It's 280s." I'm like, "Oh, this is fucking awesome. What are you talking about?" So yes, sorry. Pray continue. Forgive
It's
me. It just popped into my head.
It's okay, and we will talk about that another time. I know we're running out of minutes, but I did just want to say, in regards to the rest of the cast, is Gabriel Luna, as you said, as Joel's
Mhm.
younger brother, who's also a former soldier.
Oh,
Okay.
is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the reason why I think, I'm not going to say this is true, but let's just say he looks out for his brother, who obviously, I don't want to get too much into it, but let's just say his brother sometimes gets into trouble, and they implied that when he
They
had to be.
imply that when he's in the jail, and he goes, "No, no, it's not me this time. It's not me this time. It's a drunk driver hit me." So you get it from him saying, from Pedro being pissed off that Gabriel phones, or Joel being pissed off that Tommy phones, and he's like, "No, it wasn't me this time." And that again, it's great writing. It tells you all you need to know about their relationship and what Tommy can be like, and blah blah blah, in one line. It's very well done. It's very well done.
Now, the other thing too is that what drew me, one of the main things that I liked about the game, yes, it has a fantastic horror game element to it. You build, you construct things, you make different weapons. There's no downtime to the video game, so you're constantly on alert. At any moment, somebody could come up behind you. There's no
Mm,
pause button really. If you want to craft something, the clock is still ticking, and a character could come by and really hurt you. So I really like that they kept that terror, sense alive in it.
mhm.
But it's the relationship between Joel and Ellie that we need to see that, or else this doesn't work. And I think we will see it. They do mention that Pascal was chosen, this is from Wikipedia, guys, for his ability to portray a tough, tortured, and vulnerable character who suppresses his emotions until necessary, meaning now he has Ellie. How is this going to change him? Well, we saw how it changed him. We
Mm.
saw him spring. He can spring into action pretty quick, right,
Yeah,
Russ?
but you know what I like? He's not on board with this just yet, he's not completely like, okay, well, now she's a surrogate daughter and I must protect it's not. He's doing this for a reason. He wants the truck and he wants the guns and he wants the ammo and the fuel to go and get Tommy. That's and if he has to take this girl in order to to achieve that, then he'll do it. I think Mario are saying they're both veterans, I think.
I think they are both veterans. I'm just looking in here to see what happens here. If they talk about whether or not the characters, I'm going to click on just the character and see if it tells us anything about it, because I don't know if in this television show he is, but let's just see. Um, I'm so sorry. I'm going to find this out, and I promise you I will let you know. Let's see.
I
Creation.
think certainly while our room's looking, you carry on our room. I think Mario, certainly Joel is, and I think we were talking about this earlier on. I don't know if you probably busy working, but what really nailed it for me was I think that's Joel's truck, right? It's not Tommy's truck, so
Yeah,
therefore it has stuck on the back, like Iraq war veteran, U.S. Marines, I think he was, or something like that. But we know from that this is how Joel can handle himself, and of course, I mean it sort of gives you the impression that these guys are sort of I think rednecks is the wrong word, but these guys are used to going out into the wilderness because you see Tommy with his deer hunter rifle and all that, and he's not shy of taking a life when he has to and all that. So perhaps they both are, but certainly Joel is. But did you find out?
absolutely. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Joel is, and I that would explain his ability to survive this past 20 years, even going forward. I don't think that they would have made it through. I think a lot of the guys who have survived so far do have that background, and he's kind of like running missions, isn't he, Russ? Like
Mm.
when he goes up to the soldier, we only have a few minutes. He goes up to his soldier who he's selling, I guess, getting drugs or
Drugs,
something.
getting drugs for you, getting ecstasy tablets, whatever they were.
And as they're talking, he saved a few for himself, of course, but
Mm.
as they are talking, he's running missions, and there are some other guys, like this other dude who beats up Tess, and he sees that she's been beaten up, and it bothers him, but there's nothing they can do. It's kind of like everybody's fighting over whatever is left in this zone, in this special zone where we see them burning bodies, Russ. So
Mm.
things are not going so well. Yes, Rogue, I think we will see that. They said that he's a little injured in this. And I think that that's what we all want to see. I want to see that experience, where we see the skill of this man, who now is fighting for something. And Russ, you said he hasn't been completely brought over into
No,
accepting
and and
it.
rightly so in pure sort of writing terms. I mean, it would be ridiculous if he says to the girlfriend, "Oh yeah, well this is it now. She's going to be our daughter." It's not. He's in it to take him and his girlfriend want to go and get the promised truck, guns, fuel, and everything so they can go and save Tommy. And this girl is, you know, part of that deal. So they have to, And all right, he had a flashback to his own child being killed when the guy, and that would bring that on, and he absolutely destroys the guy. But I don't necessarily think that he's he's all in on his new dad role just yet. Obviously that's going to develop throughout the show, and I'm sure they'll lose people along the way, and I'm very excited to see it.
Yes, and Bonzo Kilborn, you're exactly right. You can see Tess, she takes a licking, but keeps on ticking, as
Mhm.
I would say. But she's a survivor and she's constantly trying to figure out how this stuff is going to work out for their survival. But she seems pretty faithful to Joel, doesn't she?
Mhm.
But she also knows and understands the situation. Gee, I would not survive. However, Mario Lopez, if I had Joel by my side, I might make it. Okay, Mario, if I had Joel by my side, I might make it. So there is that. Certainly, a lot to look forward to. We're at the 2 hour mark. Russ, where can people find you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say before we go, like Bonzo says here, he likes that Joel's wife and girlfriend is not at all glamorous as much as we love Erica. You know, I don't even think it's like looking like crap for the best. It's just how they're going to look, and they haven't played any sort of lip service to glamming up these actors. Even the ladies, they're attractive, of course they're attractive, but they're not all made up like they are in some movies. So yeah, good point. And Tom finally says, I've never played the game, so the show is interesting to me. Likewise, me and Tom Junior Jacks are in the same boat. Where can people find me? They can find me here, usually on a Sunday with you, or you can go and have a look at my 1,000 year out of date website, which is russellwhitfield.com, or you can email me at contact@russellwhitfield.com. But more importantly, where can people find you, RM?
Well, guys, you can always find me here on Positive Fandom. And if you liked what you saw today, if you enjoyed the programming, please like and subscribe to Positive Fandom. Tonight, for those of you who are interested in coming back to the channel at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be doing a live watch party of The Last of Us, the second episode with Lorena Creel right here on Positive Fandom. So do please enjoy that. But you can also find me on the Burn Network tomorrow night at 6 p.m. for my show, Ladies of the PGS, on the Burn Network, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. And Friday, come back to Positive Fandom. You can find me here with Darth Plato as we review our part 2 for Napoleon and Josephine, a love story at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday. You can always find me on the Burn Network, also on Midnight Musings, and doing a lot more for PGS Treks, PGS reviews, more Star Wars content, and a lot more coming up. I'm going to be doing more live broadcasts of award shows. Look on the community part of this channel, and you'll see that I'm covering the SAGs, the BAFTAs, as well as the Academy Awards. And also, you can find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network on Uncivilized Scoundrels as well. So, guys, please do check that out. Thank you so much, everybody, for stopping by today. And as always, everybody, no matter where you are, thank you so much, Retro Nerd Girl. Such a pleasure to
She's
see
so
you as
lovely.
well.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Retro, I'm going to watch your Excalibur thing. I can't wait. It's one of my favorite films. So, love you.
Yes. Yes, I'm looking forward to that as well. I'm going to watch that on the replay. Good to see everybody here. And always remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind, everybody. Take
Thanks so
care.
much, guys. See you soon. Cheers, cheers. Bye bye.